Many of those who are pro ABA will state that while ABA was bad in the past, what with the electric shocks and physical abuse, it's different now. They state that it's no longer the trauma inducing mess that it used to be. But are they correct? No, no, they're not. Sorry for the spoiler, but come on. I'm pretty sure most of you knew the answer already. Even though in 2019, the US Department of Defense released a report saying that ABA doesn't work, and other reports having stated that those who were exposed to ABA were 86% more likely to have PTSD than those who weren't. With all that, you'd think that that would cause people to stop relying on it. But no. There's actually a huge divide between autistics and parents of autistics between the validity of ABA. Autistics will tell personal stories of the harm ABA did to them, and parents will tell personal stories of how ABA helped their child. There are pro ABA people who believe that autistic adults who were harmed by ABA are a small minority who just had bad therapists. But that just isn't true. Even though ABA isn't as violent as it used to be, although I will get to that later, that doesn't mean it isn't abusive and traumatic. Let's start with something that hasn't changed from ABA. That its primary goal is to change the behavior of autistics. Here's the thing. When a child acts out, there's usually a reason. They're trying to communicate with you. And this is true for autistic children as well. When an autistic stims or has a meltdown or shuts down, it isn't for no reason. However, with ABA, forcing autistics to stop that behavior, it's shutting off a form of communication. Stimming could be a sign of distress, and the autistic is just trying to soothe themselves. But if they're forced to stop stimming, not only do you lose the message that's being communicated, the message being, I'm in distress, but they also lose that form of self-soothing. They're in distress, and there's nothing they can do about it. This teaches them that it's better to be calm and quiet than to signify that they may need help. This teaches them that their needs aren't important. Another issue with modern ABA is that it's a compliance-based therapy. The goal of therapy is supposed to be to help you. But with ABA, it's about learning to follow orders no matter what. Not only is this a problem in and of itself, the ways that children are encouraged to comply, they're ignored or have their toys or even food withheld from them. Adults giving other adults a silent treatment is often seen as childish and manipulative. But apparently it's okay if you do it to an autistic kid. And it's not just that's the problem. It's the fact that autistic children are taught that their body isn't their own. They're taught that when they're told to do something, whether they want to or not, they must do it. They don't get to choose what to do with their own body. When a child is taught to comply to an adult's command, no ifs, ands, or buts, they become perfect targets for predators. Their understanding of consent is so warped that their bodily autonomy is no longer a primary concern. Compliance is, and that's dangerously easy to exploit. Autistic adults who've gone through ABA have opened up about their struggles with saying no, withdrawing consent, and putting their wants and needs above the wants and needs of others. They were taught that having barriers and standing up for themselves results in punishment. ABA, by being a compliance-based therapy, is a recipe for abuse. To add more to this pile of horrible, you want to know how many hours a week autistics are expected to endure ABA? 20 to 60 hours a week. 20 hours is viewed as the absolute minimum. That's 4 hours every weekday. However, most therapists view 40 hours as the most optimal. That's a full-time job. Not to mention that these kids often also have school. In Canada, the average school day is 7 hours long. Apparently, autistics aren't allowed to have free time, social lives, hobbies, or extracurricular activities. Just school and ABA. And of course, their parents are encouraged to continue this treatment at home. These kids have nowhere that they can freely stim or just be themselves. They always have to be on. They're constantly pushed, both mentally and physically, with little to no rest. In Lavas's writing, he said that the optimal ABA team should be between 4 to 8 people, each working 4 to 8 hours a week. So the people doing ABA with the kid should only do it between 4 to 8 hours a week. But the kid has to endure 20 to 60 hours a week. I know some autistics like to call their autism a superpower, but holy crap! This is unreasonable. Want me to keep going? Of course you don't, but I'm going to anyways.
No.
Through ABA, autistics are taught that being themselves is wrong. They're taught that they're broken and that their behavior needs to be fixed if they're ever going to make it in life. If they want to be accepted by society and viewed as human, they have to change. So often autistics are viewed as subhuman. And this was especially true for our good old friend, Lavas. Yes, he's coming up again. I'm sorry. Hey, I know. Let's bring up one of his brilliant and not offensive in any way quotes. Lavas said, "With responsibility, the developmentally disabled individual takes on dignity and acquires certain basic rights as a person, because apparently they didn't deserve it in the first place or something." The quote continues, "No one has the right to be taken care of, no matter how slurred he is." In my Disability Day of Mourning video, I talked about how when an autistic person is murdered by a parent or caregiver, the murderer is often given a very light punishment, if one at all, and that the public usually sympathizes with the murderer, not the murder victim. Autistics are dehumanized, seen as lesser in the eyes of the general public, and ABA reinforces this. It teaches both the autistic child and their parent that acting autistic is improper. It pushes the idea that if an autistic person wants to be treated as a human, they need to act neurotypical. I've read of dog trainers saying that they wouldn't even subject their dogs to the treatment that autistics have to endure in ABA. This is the reality of the situation and the reality of modern ABA. But here's the major issue. When a child is diagnosed as autistic, the parent is pushed to start them on ABA. Not only that, but in some places, ABA is often the only therapy for autistics covered by insurance. The ABA lobby has worked hard to throw its money around to make sure it has as much of a monopoly on the market as possible. I remember Neurodivergent Rebel explaining how they've been uninvited to speak at events about autism because they're publicly anti-ABA. There's also the parents who put their children through ABA, who often push back against criticism because they refuse to accept that they may have hurt their child. They were told that without ABA, their child had no hope, and the thought that they may have been wrong and that their child may be forever scarred because of it is too harsh of a reality for them to face.